Erin,
Yeah.
is there anything you kept from your parents when you were a kid?
Not much.
Yeah, I know. I think so. I thought about asking this at first, and then I pretty much knew the answer, but I think that you do have something.
I have something. So it's like not really anything. They probably knew. I would like try and sneak and eat food at night, like at 8 p.m.
Oh wow, really deep into the night.
So like if everyone was in their rooms,
And how old were you?
I did it all throughout school. I did it probably when I came back summers from college even.
Okay.
I did it forever. And I would go and I would try to make the pretzel bag crinkle as little as possible. And then I would like maybe even I would like set it up so that I would take the twisty tie or whatever off earlier in the day so that it was easier
Wow.
to sneak in and
Wow.
get.
That's like when you watch like an old wrestling match and like they will take off like the turnbuckle where it's like steel underneath, but they'll just only pull the lace at first, and then later on they'll pull it off, and then the bad guy uses it.
That's like what you see on like My 600-Pound Life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Shout out TLC, I guess.
So that's mine.
Okay. That was honestly that fits the fact that like you don't have anything that you like went behind their back and did, and
I don't really have secrets ever.
no, it's honestly pretty true.
Yeah.
For me, I'm relatively similar. Like I didn't tell my parents everything I did or everywhere I went or whatever.
Different from me.
But what I was like allowed to do, like, you know what I mean? It was like
yeah.
my parents with me, they lucked out because they were very hands off with me. They let me do my thing. They let me, because I did like pretty well like throughout early school and all that, and they were like, we don't want to
Mess that up.
insert ourselves where we don't need to be inserted. So they kind of like let me do my thing, and that sort of continued into when I was an adult. And I did some dumb stuff like every teenager does. Of
Besides
course.
me.
Like every teenager besides Erin has done dumb stuff. And I've talked about the McDonald's thing on the podcast before. But even outside of that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that my parents don't know, but it kind of like didn't matter.
Yeah.
Like I was allowed to kind of go to my friends' houses whenever I wanted,
Right.
or fortunately for them and for me and for everyone, I didn't take advantage of that
You made good choices.
privilege, and I made okay choices. And I think that if you make okay choices, you give your parents and you give people the kind of reason to trust you.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do anything too stupid that ever got me in trouble.
No secret identities.
No secret identities, no multiverse hopping,
Yeah.
nothing like that. So this is a pretty boring question for us.
Well,
For us in particular. Not a boring movie though.
no.
And this question is revisited throughout the movie that we're going to be covering today.
Perfect. Finally have a new Marvel movie that Tom was excited to watch.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Who would have thought?
It's been a while, and I'm going to talk about one of the other ones
Oh, really?
in this episode.
Not Madam Web, because that's not quite Marvel.
Well, I am excited for Madam Web.
Oh, really? Are you?
No.
I'm Erin.
I'm Tom.
This is Baby's First Watch List, the podcast trying to hit all of the biggies this Oscar season. And so that's why we're talking about 2023's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse today.
Yes. We did Into the Spider-Verse as one of our first episodes.
I was going to say, that was a long time ago.
It was like number 4 or something. Number 5.
Yeah.
It was pre-Connell being born.
Wow. Oof. A lot has happened since then.
Yes.
So this animated superhero sequel was written by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. And so they're known for all kinds of stuff. 21 Jump Street, Mitchell's vs. the Machines. They do all kinds of...
They have a very recognizable like animation style in all their movies.
Yeah. And Dave Callahan, who once won a lawsuit after claiming that Sylvester Stallone took his story Barrow to make The Expendables.
Okay.
And so he has credit for The Expendables.
Stallone has a history of doing that.
Oh, really?
Apparently. Yeah. Like Rocky.
Interesting. No. Rocky's perfect.
No, but he did that for Rocky.
He took somebody's
He
short
took
story?
the story of the Bayonne bleeder.
Yeah, but that's a life story. I think that's different.
What do you mean?
This is like a script that was written that he was like, oh, I'm going to make this movie, but I'm going to call it something else. And I wrote it now.
So he's a multifaceted, what do they call that? Plagiarizer?
I don't know. Listen. So yeah, that guy wrote it with Lord and Miller, and it was directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, who is known for a lot of like superhero stories, a lot of TV shows, like a Justice League TV show.
Justice League Unlimited, Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Legend of Korra as well. And he also was one of the Beyond. He's going to direct one of the next one.
And if you look at the Wikipedia page for him, he like storyboarded a lot of animated stuff too.
A veteran.
Yes. It was also directed by Kemp Powers. So he is Oscar nominated for writing One Night in Miami.
Oh, I know I recognize his
and
name.
he created the play too.
Yeah.
And he was also co-director of Soul.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's done some really recent, really good stuff.
Right. And then it was also co-directed by Justin K. Thompson, who does not have a Wikipedia page. So I don't know what he did before.
It's impossible to know anything if they don't have a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, that's all I'm doing for my research. The music was by Daniel Pemberton. He has done a lot of stuff. He's been Oscar nominated once for original song for Trial of the Chicago 7. I could not even tell you what song it would be.
Don't recall. It was probably in the credits.
I'm sure.
Which we have an issue with that, which we've talked about in the past if you don't know.
Yes. Across the Spider-Verse has a very large cast. And then the cast is a very good cast, too, actually. So it stars Shameik Moore, Haley Steinfeld, Brian Tyree Henry, and Lauren Velez. And, you know, she's from Dexter.
Yeah, LaGuardia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
I recognize her voice.
Looked it up. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And there's supporting parts by actors like Oscar Isaac, Jake Johnson, Jason Schwartzman, Issa Rae, and Daniel Kaluuya.
And Shea Wiggum.
Who is that?
Shea Wiggum?
Yeah.
He's like a character actor. He's in a bunch of stuff. He was he was Gwen's dad. He was
Yeah.
in Boardwalk Empire, True Detective, American Hustle, Silver Linings Playbook, Joker, Vice, First Man. You've seen him in a million things.
Yeah, but who was he?
The Wolf of Wall Street. He's been in a bunch of Fast and Furious movies. What do you mean, who was he?
In these movies.
He's this guy.
I understand. I just don't know.
What do you mean you don't know Shea Wiggum?
I don't know Shea Wiggum.
I think that's a bad opinion.
It's not an opinion. It's just a fact.
In Silver Linings Playbook, he was...
man walking down the
street. He was Bradley Cooper's brother in Silver Linings Playbook.
I didn't know Bradley Cooper had a brother in that movie.
Oh, man. We got to rewatch. He was Gus Grissom in First Man.
Who?
Who was one of the first people to go on be on the mission.
That movie was not very exciting.
He was the detective in Joker.
Okay.
He's always a relatively major supporting part in all these movies.
I'll keep my eye out. So the movie was planned even before the release of the first film, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
They knew it was going to be a hit.
Listen, here's the thing, though. I feel like these titles are just too similar.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a little bit of a struggle for me there. It was delayed a bit due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then it ended up being like a really big production. Apparently, it was pitched to Sony as being similar in production to the first one, but it wasn't. It ended up having the largest crew of any animated movie ever, with 1,000 crew members.
Yeah, and they didn't have the best working environments,
Well,
allegedly.
I'll talk about it. The movie developed 6 different animation styles, one for each universe in the movie.
I loved that. I thought that was great.
And apparently, the Mitchell's vs. Machines made Lord and Miller say like, oh, wow, we learned a lot about these different animations, and so we want to apply that to this movie. So some of the different styles, one of the impressionistic paintings is one, which is like the Gwen stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the Gwen stuff. The colors that they used were like tracking the momentum of the scenes too. It was really, really interesting. Those are my favorite scenes, probably.
There was a 3-dimensional mood ring vibe to part of it. There was Mumbattan, based on a Spider-Man India comic series. There was Nueva York, based on futuristic Sid Mead paintings and stuff. He did like Blade Runner and all that kind of stuff. There were Spider-Punks, his collage imagery which was inspired by like 70s punk and band posters and vinyl records.
I read that it was old. It was like old news. It was actually like old newspapers that the animators had lying around that they used for his design.
And I think part of it too was the like the ink printing that would get like yucky and not as
Smudgy.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was a Lego world as well, which is a whole different kind of computer animated kind of style.
Yep.
There's also individually like other types too, like the Leonardo da Vinci guy.
Oh, the vulture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like kind of old school.
Straight from the Renaissance. He was like
Renaissance
made of
drawings.
He was like made of paper.
Yeah. That was cool.
He was voiced by Yorma Taccone, I believe that's how you say his
Oh,
name.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The Lonely Island.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So this past June, though, it was like obviously this huge achievement. It looks amazing. But this past June, Vulture reported on poor working conditions on the set of the film. I'm not going to go into depth about it. I know that
I can put the
look it up.
article in the show notes and stuff.
Yeah. And so one of the problems were that one of the bosses called for constant revisions, and that led to really long working hours, allegedly leading to like over 100 people leaving the production. And apparently there were also similar issues on previous animated films that this person had helmed.
Which one was it? Was it Lord?
Yeah. And allegedly. And so both Sony and producer Amy Pascal denied these claims. Amy Pascal was basically like it's hard to work on a movie.
Yeah. Okay, Amy.
So that's just what was out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, feel free to look more of that up. You'll put an article on it.
Yeah, send me the one that you after. Send me
Okay.
what you looked at and I'll post it in the show notes.
The 140-minute movie, which is long. That's long.
It
to
is,
me.
from what I read, it is the longest American-made animated film of all time.
Yeah, it's too long. It's still, but like again, is it too long? Not
The
really.
weird part is at the end, I
don't know.
literally thought there was 20 minutes left in the
Yeah,
movie.
it's weird.
Yeah.
Well, and originally the whole idea was that the movie was going to be split into two, part 1 and part 2, and then they just are changing the name of the last one.
Yes. Yes.
It was released in early June 2023, netting $690.8 million on a budget between 100 and 150 million, which is a very big profit.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess how long it took for this movie to surpass the first movie Into the Spider-Verse's gross?
3 weeks.
12 days.
That was close.
12 days, and
Even shorter.
it already beat it. It also beat another movie as Sony's #1 animated release ever. I don't think you'll guess this.
Sony's #1 animated release ever?
It's very much not like it's just okay.
I don't know.
The Smurfs.
I never would have guessed the Smurfs.
I figured.
Never ever would I have guessed that.
Well, Smurfs has been dethroned. One controversial aspect of the release, a few lines from the theatrical release of it were removed before the digital release, and a few animations were like cleaned up or tweaked is what they like kind of were saying. And so if you went to see it in theaters, there were a couple things that if you watched it on streaming or whatever that were not there anymore or were slightly different.
Interesting.
And apparently some people didn't like that.
It's a living document.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's fine. Like, how many movies change from when they're released at a festival to the theatrical release? Like, it happens all the time. The movie was critically acclaimed, very much so, and it has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has done really well this season at the awards, all the awards places, and it did receive a nomination for Best Animated Feature. I would say that it is probably going to win.
I would say that if there is a lock, this is maybe the closest one to being a lock of like the, maybe you say Divine Joy Randolph for supporting actors is a lock, but this is up there. The Boy and the Heron is the only thing that has a chance of beating it.
Yeah. And it even had a possibility of Best Picture nomination.
And Best Original Score.
Well, and I said that was considered for many to be a little bit of a snub for Best Original Score.
As Nick talked about on our Oscars
Uncle
episode.
Nick P is he mentioned that John Williams got nominated over this movie for an Indiana Jones movie that, let's face it, didn't exactly set the world on fire.
Yeah.
And I think that the score is actually one of the best things about the movie.
It's amazing. It's great.
It's amazing. And a sequel, Beyond Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, is planned and is expected. They said 2024. I don't think it's going to happen in 2024, but
Well, if they filmed it kind of as one movie, it's possible that it's mostly already.
I don't think that is necessarily true. I mean, I think you're right, but I don't think that they did that.
I'm just saying, it's I could see that being the aim.
Yeah, right. So I did find a New Jersey connection in the movie.
Yep, called it out as it happened.
Which is that Miles, the main character, Miles Morales, he is at a meeting about college and his future with his guidance counselor, played by Rachel Dratch. And
another major star in this film.
She is.
She is
I recognized her immediately.
I wasn't being sarcastic.
And he is expressing interest in attending Princeton University.
Yes.
Princeton University, located in the beautiful state of New Jersey.
Yes.
His mom balks at it, but not in a typical New Jersey joke kind of way.
Not in an anti-New Jersey way.
More in a, no, it's too far.
It's outside of Brooklyn.
It's outside of Brooklyn. It's outside of New York City. So I was happy that it wasn't a typical New Jersey joke.
New Jersey?
Yeah. Especially because Princeton University is it's the number one university.
According to U.S. News or whatever.
Yep. And it's also beautiful.
Yeah, it's the best. I love Princeton.
So I'm interested to see is that bad that's what I'm most excited to see if
I thought
he ends up going to Princeton?
I thought that we were going to get a bit of a resolution on that in this movie, and we did not, which we will get to.
Yeah, so I hope that they have a little bit of where he's at Princeton at the end of the movie or something.
Yeah.
That's pathetic that's like what I'm most excited about. All right, give us our synopsis, Tom.
All right, so I did a synopsis, and then I realized how much was in this movie, so we're just going to bear with me here.
Okay.
All right. The opening focuses on Spider-Woman, Gwen Stacy, played by Haley Steinfeld, who, along with Spider-People, Miguel O'Hara, played by Oscar Isaac, and Jess Drew, played by Issa Rae, saves her world from an Italian Renaissance-themed version of the supervillain Vulture, who, if you recall from Spider-Man Homecoming, was the Michael Keaton character.
Oh.
After her father, who believes Spider-Woman to be a murderer, tries to arrest her, Gwen reveals her identity. Miguel and Jess save her from being arrested, and Miguel reluctantly allows her into the Spider Society. In Brooklyn, on Earth 1610, 16 months after the events of Into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales, played by Shameik Moore, encounters a villain called the Spot, played by Jason Schwartzman. The Spot explains that Miles caused his body to become infused with portals when he destroyed the Collider in the first movie, and that the Spot, as a scientist, had transported a spider from another dimension, Earth 42, which bit Miles and turned him into Spider-Man. The Spot now has the ability to travel to other universes using his portals and make himself more powerful in order to hurt Miles. Gwen returns to Earth 1610 to track the Spot and meets up with Miles. Miles secretly follows her through a portal to a different universe, and he, Gwen, and two other Spider-People, Spider-Punk Hobie Brown, played by Daniel Kaluuya, and Spider-Man India, Paviter Pravakar, like Peter Parker, played by Karan Soni, battle the Spot, and Miles saves Pav's Crush's father, Inspector Singh. When the crew are sent to the Spider Society HQ, Peter B. Parker returns, played by Jake Johnson, and he and his infant daughter, Mayday, are there alongside Miguel, who explains that each of the Spider-People's stories throughout the multiverse contain canon events, such as the deaths of a police captain close to Spider-Man, for example, Inspector Singh, who did not die, or Gwen's dad, or Miles' dad, and that straying from these events threatens reality and may cause that universe to collapse, which in turn will collapse the entire multiverse as a consequence. Miles realizes that the Spot is going to kill his dad, Jeff, played by Brian Tyree Henry, when he becomes police captain in a couple of days, and Miguel attempts to stop Miles from saving Jeff in order to preserve the multiverse and preserve the canon event. Miguel corners Miles and says he's the original anomaly. He was never supposed to be Spider-Man because the spider wasn't from his universe, and that now Earth 42 has no Spider-Man, and if he was never bitten, his universe's Peter Parker would have lived and destroyed the Collider, and the Spot wouldn't exist at all. Miles overpowers Miguel and sets up the portal to send him home, but he ends up not in his universe, but in Earth 42, because he has like the genetic material of the spider. Mm-hmm. Gwen, meanwhile, is sent home by Miguel, where she reconciles with her father. Her father gives her Hobie's portal watch that he left there for her so that she was allowed to travel throughout the multiverse. over on Earth 42, Miles realizes that in that universe, his uncle Erin, played by Mahershala Ali, who died in Into the Spider-Verse, is alive, and Jeff, his father, is dead. There's a ton of crime due to there being no Spider-Man, and worse yet, he learns that in this universe, Miles is actually the Prowler, which is what Mahershala Ali, Uncle Erin, was in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the Spot begins his multiversal attack. Our Miles is held hostage on Earth 42, and Gwen assembles a team of spider people to go rescue him. Boom, cliffhanger, see ya, Beyond the Spider-Verse, credits, Across the Spider-Verse.
There you go.
I think I did okay there.
That's not bad.
There's a lot going on in this movie.
There is a lot going on.
And I didn't even touch at all on him and his parents stuff.
Yeah.
Which I thought was maybe the best,
Yeah.
some of the best stuff in the movie.
I like the down to earth stuff personally. That's
thought-
always my favorite.
I actually thought that it all clicked together really well in this movie with all of the other stuff, because all of the other stuff relates back to that.
Sure.
Like, he has a somewhat strained relationship with his parents, but the whole idea of the movie is him making the choice on whether he needs to save his dad. And it's not really a choice for him,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of the grand scheme of things, whether he's going to save his dad or whether he's going to save the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
And it at least appears from this movie that he's going to save his dad.
Yeah.
Which I find to be a really interesting way of tying the whole like massive scale of the story down to, like, toning it down to where it matters to the person.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it was really, really well done.
I thought it was a great movie.
These types of movies don't have stakes for me a lot of the time. Like,
Mhm.
I tuned out of the MCU in large part because like the fact they haven't handled the multiverse very well.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it because you automatically think that, like, if somebody dies, it doesn't matter. But, like, by framing this movie with canon events where, like,
Mm-hmm.
they could destroy the whole thing if this specific thing doesn't happen every single time, I think that is a really strong way of tying everything together and making everything matter,
Yeah.
which to me is the big challenge when it comes to a multiverse.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I am leaving the questions to you this week
Okay.
because you have a whole bunch.
And I left them to you last week.
Yeah, so it's all good.
Yeah. So we're even. All right. So
That means for all that jazz, we got to both bring it.
a large part of this movie is the sort of tension between Miles and his mom and his dad, and sort of how much they want to let him sort of spread his wings, as they say in the movie, or how much they want to sort of keep an eye on him and make sure he's safe. And Miles, of course, does not tell them for the most part in this movie. He does tell Earth 42 mom that he's Spider-Man, and she's like, what is Spider-Man? Because he doesn't exist there. When our kids are teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
do you think we would be able to know if they were like a superhero?
I think probably.
I would probably guess.
Here's some reasons why. Number one, Miles's parents have jobs that are like typical off hours jobs.
Right.
Like his dad's a cop, so he's like, and he's high up. He's about to be captain.
Yes.
So he's probably working weird hours.
And this
weird
town, and
shifts.
also this is a version of Brooklyn that has a ton of crime.
Right.
So
His mom has like 12-hour shifts at the hospital. So she works some days on, some days off, and they live in the city. So there's going to be
he walks to school, he walks home from
to school, he walks home exactly. Like there's a lot of opportunity for him to kind of be more independent, and when he comes home he might be like a little bit more of like a latchkey kid where he's kind of figuring out himself. He also, I think, lives at school. Doesn't he have a
He has a dorm in this
he's
movie.
a dorm at school too.
Yeah.
So he's not even living with his parents all the time.
But he didn't when he became Spider-Man 16 months ago.
Yeah, but he does
was
now.
living. I'm just saying he was living with them at the time when he was. So he was living with them at one point when he was a superhero.
Right. But now it leaves even more openness to it. I mean, like we have a security system.
We do have.
So
A security
I
system.
feel like we would know if they opened the window and the alarm went off. That probably would go off.
But if he was Spider-Man, specifically Spider-Man, he would be able to leave through other exits of the house.
Okay, but we have cameras.
We do have cameras. That's true.
So I would be able to see what's Spider-Man doing out there.
But there are places that are covered that don't have cameras that we wouldn't be able to see.
Maybe. I also think that if our small town started having Spider-Man appear all over, I'd be like, oh, that looks like So it looks like one of our kids. Okay. It's probably him.
I love that whole conversation that Jeff has with Miles on the roof of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And Miles is like, whenever Miles talks to Jeff, he always like puts like a deeper voice on.
Yeah.
It's like it's very funny. It's a good little gag.
Yeah. And so in a big city, it could be anybody. I think that we could probably figure it out a little bit easier.
I also think, related to the fact that his parents have typical off hours jobs, like we are always home, like when we're not working, and I work from home twice a week. So like there's not a whole lot of time for them to be sneaking out. I feel like I don't know.
We'll see.
I feel like we might know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a different situation living in like a suburb.
The odds, I think, are more in our favor.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right here. Did you like the supporting cast of spider people better in this one or the first one?
Well, it's interesting. I think that the ones in the first movie, you have like Nicolas Cage, John Mulaney.
You get a couple of overlaps. You get Penny Parker in this one, and you get Peter B.
Yeah. Well, I love.
Obviously, Gwen.
I feel like Jake Johnson was like a lead part in the first one.
He was.
And more supporting in the second one. If I take I think that in the first one, the supporting roles were definitely more showy in the way that Nicolas Cage is like
Spider-Man Noir.
Yeah, like wow, and then Spider Pig. It was funny and
Spider Ham.
Oh well, yeah. But I think that in this one, they were more fleshed out characters.
No doubt.
With Hobie, aka Spider Punk, and then
Issa Rae's character,
and then Miguel, yeah, and the Spider-Man India, every character there was more of a meant to be not just for I think added fun.
I think
color,
this movie, there's a lot more thought behind the supporting characters. I totally agree.
And I think that they did such. I feel like in both the movies, everybody was so in.
Yeah.
That I loved both.
I think that Miguel might be my favorite character in this movie because he has such
Of course, you like the sad boy.
No, he's not a sad boy. I mean, he
is a sad boy.
He's trying to keep the multiverse together. He's got the thing. The thing that I like about
because he's a sad boy because he messed up his own life.
It wasn't his own life. That was the life he stepped into.
Yeah, and he was sad. Sad boy.
Because it destroyed the universe, and everyone died.
Okay, well...
Everyone died. That universe doesn't exist anymore.
All right, well, how many are there?
Multi.
Many multi.
Well, the thing that I love about him is not necessarily, I love Oscar Isaac. It's not necessarily the performance,
right.
But I like what they did with him in that the writers treated that character with such respect in that he's not a villain. He's a villain in our story because he's inhibiting Miles and he might get Jeff killed and all that. But if you look at it from his perspective, everything makes sense. He's not, everything he's doing is slightly desperate, slightly irrational, but it's in the interest of the multiverse. He's doing what he thinks is right and what is good for people. He's not a villain, and the movie doesn't treat him as a villain. It treats him as an obstacle. Which I think are two different things. The Spot in this movie is a villain. Yeah. He's your classic, oh, I'm going to get you, Spider-Man, because you did this to me, and now...
He was good, too. Jason Schwartzman
was great.
Yeah.
And I think that the fine difference there is that the movie treats the Spot as the threat, and it treats Miguel as an obstacle. Yeah. And I love the way that Oscar Isaac played that role, because he's that type of actor.
Well, what's cool about that is that the character, it shows you that there's no necessarily one right answer.
No, right.
And that's very lifey too, where there's a lot of situations in real life where there's no right answer, and you may have an opinion that this is the right thing to do, and then somebody else might say, well, I don't know, I think I want to do this instead or whatever. And it's not necessarily, one person's right, one person's wrong. It's you can kind of see how the gray area in it, which is the opposite of the Spot, which is fully black and white.
Yeah, literally black and white and figuratively black and white.
Exactly.
Well, the thing that I like about the choice that has to be made here is that Miles has dealt with trauma in his life. He lost his uncle. It's not like he's like this just fresh kid. He knows what it feels like to lose a family member. And so he is sort of wise beyond his years in a way. And so when he's faced with the prospect of being Spider-Man and doing what you need to do to save everybody, like he's trying to do by himself, and letting something happen to somebody you love, for him it's instantly, I'm going to save the person I love, and then we'll figure the rest out later. Like it sort of frames him back again as a kid, which is effective in this movie, I think. And Gwen is the same way. Like the adults seem to have more of a, like, we got to do this way. Like we got to do this thing for multiple reasons. One being that they have sort of the benefit or the inhibition of being an adult and having all these experiences. And number two, they've already had all these people die. Like Gwen and Miles have not. So they're the ones that are trying to change the story, you know, change fate, change everything. And sometimes it takes people who are not so bogged down in experiences and preconceived notions to smash something open like that. And maybe in the next one, they're able to save everybody, you know, and save the multiverse. And I think that it was really, really well done in putting that in the way that they framed it through sort of like adults versus
Well, and
teenagers.
you also have Peter B. Parker coming back with a whole new perspective as a new dad, which in the previous movie, he was also pretty much a sad boy.
He was.
And now, even though he still has experienced all that, he kind of has this new perspective and new view of life.
The whole movie, in my opinion, is about parenthood and
I think so.
being a child. Like
Yeah.
it's the whole movie is about the parent-child relationship, which again, I've talked about in the past how I love when you have a movie that's disguised as something else, but it's really about something else. And like this is a movie that's a perfect example of that. It's got all these bombastic colors and all these animation styles and all these characters and all these spider people and there's a spider dinosaur and all this stuff. But in reality, at the heart of it, it's about a kid growing up, two kids growing up, and their relationships with their parents. In their different situations. And again, Peter B. Parker's relationship to his child as a dad.
It's kind of interesting because you watched the first one. We did even on the podcast, the first one before we were officially parents.
Yes.
So I wonder if that had something to do with it too. You viewing it from that perspective now. I mean, it's a different movie, but you know, still had that parental
It did.
child relationship in there. And
in multiple ways.
Yeah, and seeing how maybe your perspective has shifted over the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Or even 2 years from when we did it for the podcast.
I didn't go back and listen to the episode before we did this, but I'd
Yeah.
be interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Except I'm scared at how the sound quality sounds. So in this movie, there's a spider society on Nueva York, and it's filled with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different Spider-Mans, Spider-Women, Spider-Man characters. Donald Glover as Prowler is there from the MCU. There's theoretically an infinite amount of spider people there.
Yes.
Is there a multiverse that you'd like to visit that just has something like that, where it's billions of the same variations of the same person? I don't think I have one, to be honest with you. I just came up with this. I would find especially Spider-Man, I would find this multiverse, this universe of all these different Spider-Man, this hub, so annoying. There's a little scene where they're walking through and like all of them are making wisecracks at the same time, and like you can't even hear what they're saying because everyone's just wisecracking. And like if that's what it is all the time, you can count me out.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, you know, if we bring it back to our most famous person at the moment, Taylor Swift, it's like having an Eras tour, right? You have all the different Taylor Swifts.
Oh my God.
Think about it that way. Yeah.
Oh.
Which the Eras tour I thought was such a smart idea. Like that is such a genius idea. But I'm trying to think like maybe like Pop-Tart flavors.
I guess.
But
I was thinking,
wait, but they exist already.
yeah, but there's probably multiverses where there's like a steak and potatoes Pop-Tart.
Yeah. That'd be kind of cool.
How
How about like, you know how there's some people that like whenever they travel to a new country, they like go to the McDonald's in that country because it has like all new stuff.
That's kind of the multiverse.
I guess that's kind of like a multiverse.
The McDonald's multiverse is
Yeah.
when you go to like the Norway McDonald's,
Yeah.
the Oslo McDonald's,
Right.
and you get like the fillet of fish, but it's like salmon from the local creek.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like something like that would work because, you know, we made fun of this, but when we went to Scotland, one of the people that we were with, they had to go to the McDonald's.
But that wasn't
No,
because
that was because they had coupons. But
that wasn't because
so-
they were McDonald's fan, like they were trying to hit all the McDonald's everywhere. That was just because they weren't experiencing food in other countries the way that I personally would experience food in other countries.
Whatever, it still worked. Maybe they're the multiversers.
Maybe they are.
Yeah.
Shout out Pat.
Shout out Pat from Delaware.
Did you like the ending?
Yeah, I don't really care. I think it was fine. I do agree that it was abrupt. I know that you thought it was like, what the? Like, I thought there'd be more. But I don't hate it. What I like about a cliffhanger in this case, because it is a cliffhanger, right? We don't know what is going to happen. It's very much like off a cliff, like, boom. What I liked about it is that it kind of reminded me of what a comic book would do.
Every single comic book has a cliffhanger ending like that.
See? So to have that in the middle of the series, I think is actually kind of a smart idea. And it kind of brings you back to the source material.
It is smart, but the difference is you're going to have to wait a year or two for this next movie.
I'm okay with that.
When it comes to a comic book, you get it the next month.
I just think that we are very much a need it now society, and there's nothing wrong with a little cliffhanger action. And the guy that one of the directors compared it to Empire Strikes Back.
I'm going to
which
compare it.
you, I know, mentioned.
I independently
earlier
said
today.
that earlier. I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah,
Did he say like
that was like an
the
inspiration for it.
Totally, I could totally see that. The way that the bad guy ends up kind of winning at the end, and
Yeah,
not necessarily the bad guy, but like there's the big threat. And
Yeah.
our heroes are sort of like scattered and under adversity, and it just kind of cuts.
I see nothing wrong with that, especially when it's already, it's going to be a successful movie, right? Just like with Star Wars, they knew the second one was going to be big because the first one was big. And so they knew here that the second Spider-Verse movie was going to be big. So you have your built-in audience, and I think that it does something that maybe the other movies, maybe in the Marvel universe, are a little afraid to do, which is do something that is like peril and it's not looking good and goodbye.
Well,
Which I guess, did one of those Avengers movies do that?
yes, and I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
And it literally did what you just did.
Wow. Oh yeah. So I don't know what I'm talking about, I guess.
Yeah, but that Infinity War, which I will talk about, is like the peak of the Marvel universe.
Well, there you go.
It never got better before that or after that, in my opinion.
Well, there you go. So I think totally fine.
So I like it, but this is my nitpick with this movie is that after 2 hours and 20 minutes, I wanted some resolution to something.
I get that.
And I think that from a writing perspective, like this isn't really I love this movie. I like it probably more than the first one. It's kind of hard to view this as a standalone movie, though.
It's not a standalone movie.
Right, it's not. Like, at least in Empire Strikes Back, like, so what happens at the end of Empire Strikes Back, spoilers, if you haven't seen it, it's like 50 years old now. Go watch it. They all get messed up by Darth Vader. They all get captured. And then Han Solo gets frozen by Jabba the Hutt because Darth Vader turns him. I think Darth Vader turns him over to Jabba the Hutt, who had a bounty on him. So he gets frozen. Luke Skywalker has his big showdown with Darth Vader when he finds out that old Darth is his old man.
Mm-hmm.
He cuts his arm off. He cuts his hand off, and so they're back on the ship, and Luke like narrowly escapes, and he gets his new like robotic hand, and like the movie ends on like a sour. It's not a cut off cliffhanger. It's like it's almost like the good guys are licking their wounds, and they're gonna
oof, we did it now.
And they're gonna have to come back in Return of the Jedi, and from the lowest point that they've been, and the highest point that the Empire's been, and knock them off their throne one way or another. The thing that this movie doesn't do is it doesn't have any sort of like, it just cuts off in the middle.
It's like in the middle of the action.
Literally in the middle of the action. And I think if they had done something where I get the point of having Miles trapped on Earth 42 and like held hostage by Miles as Prowler or whatever. But the only thing you really get resolved is Gwen and her dad, which is a good, it's one of the through lines of the movie, so I can appreciate that. But at the same time, like, you have the Spot stuff still happening. To me, there's like too much left open for me to like this ending.
Okay.
I would have maybe resolved one or two more smaller things.
Sure.
You still have Miguel, who has this big problem with Miles. Like, maybe you have
At least you get Gwen's dad is not on the police force anymore.
right, so he is theoretically saved from
So there is something,
being
but
killed. But
it's just one little thing, though.
yeah. So I just think that Empire Strikes Back, you could watch that movie, and if there was never another movie, you could be like, that's a bleak ending,
But it's an
but
ending.
it's an ending.
This is not the ending.
No.
No.
In Empire Strikes Back, it's just kind of like the good guys lose, and that's it.
Yeah.
If there was no Return of the Jedi, that's just the end of Star Wars.
Right.
But yeah, this one, it's hard for me to look at this one as a movie by itself and really judge this ending on that, because it's just not. It's too incomplete to me.
What Earth do you think we live on? What number?
There is a number.
Oh, really?
People know the number.
It's not 888, which is the number that I kept putting on craps.
No, I don't think so.
I learned craps yesterday.
In the MCU, we live on 1218.
12. That's a good number.
I think. I think so.
Okay. I mean, you could tell me any number. I wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently, it was destroyed at one point in the Marvel comics.
Okay.
Yeah. What are the best cliffhanger endings, do you think?
Oh, I didn't even think about this.
I have a bunch if you need me to jump in.
So one that kind of sticks out to me, I think of endings that got people talking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind a cliffhanger ending.
No, I don't either.
I like ambiguous endings. I like not knowing things. Like, I like that.
I like it if it's in service of the art. And I think this one
Yeah.
is in service of the art. It's just not what I would have chosen.
So for me, like, I think of like Inception,
Inception, I wrote down.
which a lot of people got really heated about it.
But it's
And
good.
it doesn't matter.
But, well, that's the point. Inception is a great cliffhanger ending because it's not a cliffhanger.
Exactly.
There is nothing. It does not matter whether the top stops
Right.
or falls or doesn't.
Doesn't
It
matter.
does not matter.
Yeah. And so I love that happens, and then everybody's mad about it and is like arguing if whether it stops or not, but it doesn't matter.
I think we're at the point now where the conventional wisdom and most people who talk about Inception at this point understand that it doesn't matter whether the top stopped or not, because our character, Cobb, I think his name was, Leo, doesn't care
Right.
because he's with his family.
He's going to be in this universe no matter what, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a character moment, not a plot moment.
Exactly. One ending that I think is mischaracterized as an ambiguous ending is The Sopranos.
Yeah, I didn't go with TV shows.
I
but yeah.
don't find it to be a cliffhanger ending at all.
No.
I think that it is extremely clear what happens at the end of The Sopranos, which I'm not going to say.
Yes.
Because I know that my sister and brother-in-law are watching it currently. But I think that it is, if you watch the show,
If you listen to the
and
dialogue.
and you listen to the dialogue that is spoken, it is extraordinarily clear what the ending of that is. And so I find it kind of iconic. First of all, I love the ending. But I find it
might be my favorite ending of anything.
I love it. But I find it iconic that people have spent the past like billion
15 years or whatever
arguing about it, and it being like, oh, blah, blah, and it being this whole talking point, and it's so great.
I agree on that one.
Let me think. What other cliffhanger endings can I think about here?
Here's one that's a cliffhanger, but it's not really. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid,
Oh, that's a great one.
where it's like a freeze frame when they're running into the group of people shooting at them.
Yeah, that's
It's
a good
like-
one. It's kind of like a Thelma and Louise thing. Well, that one.
Yeah.
Like, that's
That one
that's
doesn't
a
have-
cliff not hanger.
That one doesn't have any ambiguity to it, I don't think. Butch Cassidy barely does, but that one definitely doesn't.
That deals with a cliff literally.
Yeah. Halloween. The original Halloween.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Which, if you put it into context of 1978, there's like, it's one of the first big slashers, and suddenly, I mean, if you haven't watched Halloween, you just skip this whole segment, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, we did Halloween, and at the end of Halloween, Michael Myers disappears. Like, they don't know where he went, and then it's kind of like a spooky camera through the town, and like,
Where is he?
Yeah, where is he? He could be anywhere in
Yeah.
this suburban white picket fence town of
Yeah.
Haddonfield, Illinois, which is actually Haddonfield, New Jersey.
New Jersey connection.
And I love that as a slasher. slasher, one of the first slashers
Good stuff.
that was like a major hit. It's perfectly sort of exemplifies what the movie's trying to go with in terms of like this could happen anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good one. How about the ending of Prisoners?
Yes. Oh, I didn't even write that one down.
Yeah, that's a fun one. The movie's not very fun, but the ending's fun. And I kind of like that. It brings it back to a cinematic quality that the whole movie is I feel like it feels very real and dark and scary and whatever.
It's a gritty movie.
Very gritty. And the end, it kind of brings you back to, well, it is still a movie.
It's Hollywood.
It's still Hollywood. And I like that about that movie.
I also wrote down Empire Strikes Back, of course, which I just talked about. John Wick 2.
Oh, yeah.
So John Wick, that's one I think that is perfect because the cliffhanger is like a coda. Like the movie is all done. Like everything that John Wick was supposed to do in the movie was kind of wrapped up. And then Ian McShane's character is like, bro,
putting out the all call for you, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that starts and it gets you hyped for John Wick 3 because now you know the whole movie's going to be about that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I thought that was an awesome ending. When I watched it, I was like, no way.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a really good one.
Saw.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
If you don't know the ending of Saw, it's the guy in the middle of the bathroom and he stands up and he walks out and he closes the bathroom door and you don't know what happened to those guys. You find out eventually.
Yeah.
But actually, I think one of them is already dead. But whatever happens there. And it's an iconic twist. And I find that horror movies do this a lot.
Yeah.
The Thing is another one where at the end it's Keith David and I almost said Jeff Bridges and Kurt Russell. And you're not sure if one of them is the Thing or if the Thing is dead and you just don't know. And I think they just sit there and like point the flamethrowers at each other or something like that.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And that's just the end of the movie. And what else do I have here? And then the other one I wanted to talk about was Infinity War. Which was the Marvel movie, obviously, where Thanos does the snap, and it wipes out
50%
of the people. Balance, as all things should be. And when in recent memory, that was the theater moment that was the craziest for me. Because if you think about it for a split second, you're like, all right, well, it's Marvel, it's Disney. They killed off all the new characters,
right,
and left all the old characters.
Yeah, like that's not gonna.
It's not gonna last.
No.
But for that moment, when
you're like
that moment when what's his name, the Winter Soldier, like just disintegrates. Which he was the first one, I think. He's like Cap or whatever, and then just disintegrates. We were like, wait a minute,
is that Sebastian Stan?
Yeah, we were like, what? And then it was, it happened to Black Panther. Spider-Man, obviously.
I don't feel so good.
That was okay. That was a little ridiculous. But like when that happens, we were sitting there like, they're actually doing it. Like they're actually killing all these characters.
Yeah.
And just for that split second, just for that moment when you're engulfed in the movie and you're totally like not thinking about what they're gonna do in 2 years.
Yeah, of course.
What's gonna happen in the next one. Yeah. It was like, wow.
Were people freaking out?
Oh yeah, screaming like the whole thing. Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you build like 10 years worth. 10 years?
2008 was
2008
Iron Man.
to around because Endgame came out in 2019, so about 10
around
years.
10 years
Of characters and movies and hype and talk and people on Reddit and people on Twitter and Comic Cons and all this stuff built up into one moment when they just wipe half of it out. I thought that was like a genius move, and it's in that second movie in a trilogy ish, second to last movie in a series, let's say, because it happened in Empire Strikes Back, which was the second in the trilogy. It happened in this, which is the second in a trilogy. Is it supposed to go past Beyond the Spider-Verse, or is it like it's just
right
set?
now? I think that it's supposed to be
a
set
trilogy
like that, but then who knows?
And it happened in the second to last Avengers in that sort of phase or whatever in that series. So it sort of sets up the finale of the comeback, and it was just a moment that it would be hard for me to imagine another comparable moment happening in movies right now.
Yeah.
It was like a once in a lifetime, once in a generation kind of like flashpoint.
Yeah.
Where they just wiped everything out. And it was really bold. even the fact that they brought them all back in Endgame, like it's still a really bold move to kill off all your people in that movie.
Well, it'll be fun when our kiddos watch.
Yeah, especially when it's a bunch of characters that like you've been building for all this time, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so those are the cliffhangers that I wrote down, and I think they're all great for different reasons.
Yeah, I agree. I like those kind of endings.
Who's your favorite actor in this cast?
Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah.
He's the best. He's just the best actor. And I also I saw online that he just looked up fan Spotify playlists of Spider-Punk and then just listened to that. And that's what he did to prep, which is so good. And also Jake Johnson. I think that he is so good in this role as Peter B. Parker.
He is.
And I watched some earlier seasons of New Girl, so I knew him for a few years. I did not watch Let's Be Cops, but you know, whatever. And I always loved him. I always thought he was like so just like cute and nice and still not nice. You know, like he's got that cool little edge to him. And I think that that plays into the cynicism of that character, which is the opposite of what you would expect for Peter A. Parker.
Yeah, I love that it's Peter B. Parker. We talked about that in the first one.
And so I think that he is just wonderful. And I think that him in this one really emphasized his growth as a character. And I like that.
I'm going to go with our other guy from Widows, Brian Tyree Henry.
Oh, he's the best. Such warmth in his performance.
In this movie especially. He's really a chameleon.
He's the best. I love Brian Tyree Henry.
He's excellent in Atlanta, which was the first thing I saw him in as Paperboy.
Me too.
He's hilarious.
Yes.
He was my favorite in the show. Like I know that Lakeith Stanfield's great too, but like I always felt that at least from the comedic aspects of it, him being the Paperboy being the straight man in the group he's just so good at it.
He's so funny.
Widows, as I mentioned, where he plays, he's kind of like a he's a criminal, like a leader of like a little criminal organization, and he's running for alderman, I think, in Chicago against Colin Farrell's character. And his sort of like heavy is Daniel Kaluuya, who is wild in that movie. But what I love about Brian Tyree Henry's character in that movie is that he is sort of he's symbolizing the sort of corruption in politics from the activist perspective.
Exactly.
In that, like, you have these activists who turn out to not be so great and turn out to be in it for the same reasons that your Colin Farrell characters are in it for,
right? Or
your Robert Duvall characters are in it for in that movie. So it's a really like complex type. Like Brian Tyree Henry thrives in these complex types of roles. If Beale Street could talk, he's the friend that comes out of jail and has that whole big sequence where he's like talking about how bad jail was and how he's been mistreated and all that stuff. And he's extremely important to that movie.
In just one scene, really.
One like little sequence. He was great in Bullet Train.
He was one of the twins.
Him and Aaron Taylor Johnson, the twins.
Yeah, that's a great role. He was great in that.
I haven't seen Eternals. I haven't. I honestly don't really remember him that much in Joker. I don't remember that much about Joker. And Causeway. Causeway is the other one.
That's his Oscar-nominated role.
Yeah, which is worth watching if you haven't seen it. It was available on Apple TV+.
I think it is.
But I think it's an Apple TV movie.
I think so too. That's a great movie where you see Jennifer Lawrence at her best. I think
she's better in those types of roles.
I agree, and I think she's lovely in Causeway. And Brian Tyree Henry is the heart of the movie.
It's a nice small movie, and the two of them are just excellent with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I mean, I love Daniel Kaluuya. Shout out to Mahershala Ali as well, who has a small role in this. Shout out to Oscar Isaac. I also low-key love Haley Steinfeld.
She's great in everything.
Whenever I see her in anything.
She's very good.
She was great in Hawkeye.
We got to watch that Emily Dickinson show.
Oh, yeah. Emily in Paris?
No,
I'm just kidding.
You know that's supposed to be Emily in Paris.
Is it? Yeah, I mean, then we got Issa Rae, who I didn't watch Insecure, but she's good in everything I see her in.
The President and Barbie.
Schwartzman.
Yeah, Jason Schwartzman's great.
Lauren Velez was good in Dexter. I'm just looking at the cast right now.
Lauren Velez is she played a great role.
Yeah.
Rio was great in this movie.
Oh, we didn't say Greta Lee from Past Lives, too.
She played like a funny
She
little...
played the robot, the assistant.
Lila.
Yeah.
And Shamik Moore is made for the role
absolutely.
of Miles Morales.
Yeah.
The cast is just great.
I just don't really know him from anything else.
He was in Dope, and then he was just in the it was a show for a couple years. Was it about the Wu-Tang Clan?
Wu-Tang in America. Oh, he played Raekwon.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
I gotta watch that show. Yeah, and then they have all the Amanda Stenberg was in it for a second. Andy Samberg was in it for Donald Glover was in it for a second. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Brian Tyree Henry on this one.
Fair. I thought he was excellent.
What does this movie do better or worse than other superhero movies? We sort of alluded to it earlier, I think.
Better pretty much everything for me.
Well, for me, what's better is the stakes. Like, there's a reason to think. Like, I don't want Jeff to die. I know that he has to die in this canon event, but I love the character, and I love Miles, and I love the people who love Miles. I love Rio. Like,
yeah.
The fact of the matter is the end. Like, the whole thing here is that this person has to die. Or else everything else dies.
Yeah.
And the characters are so good at the writers and the characters and the actors are so good at making me care for them that I'm ready to let everybody else go so that Jeff and Rio and everybody else is okay in our universe.
Yeah.
And I totally identify with Miles wanting to do that.
Something that I think this movie does better than most superhero movies is that I think that this movie really appreciates and is inspired by the comic books that it comes from.
Yeah.
And so it's obviously an animated movie, and it really leans into that. And of course, comic books or graphic novels or whatever, the superhero stories kind of start from. Most of them are hand-drawn with artwork, and that, I think, is emphasized rather than changed, because you would have like the Dark Knight series, Christopher Nolan series, really was like, okay, we're going to take the comic books and we're going to make it real life and dark and gritty. And then
we're going to Frank Millerize it.
Right. And then you're like, okay, the MCU has become almost its own genre of look and feel to it.
In the opposite way that the Sony superhero movies have become their own genre of just horrible.
and the DC movies, same thing. Like, they're all kind of taking the source material and sort of diverging from it. And I think that this movie really kind of leans into the comic bookness of it. Exactly. And I think that that's very much to its strength. And I mean, it's just expertly done.
Well,
too.
I find that to your point, I find that other comic book related media that aren't necessarily Marvel, DC, and all that stuff, like The Boys and like Invincible, do the same thing. They lean The Boys live action. They have some animated stuff, but I didn't watch that spinoff. And Invincible, which is an animated show, like they are so comic-y. And something that, again, to your point, veered from that was The Walking Dead, which became less and less of a sort of cultural phenomenon as it left that arena.
Right.
So like, especially for fans of a comic book, you might want to, like, they're probably tuning in for something similar, if not the exact same, like similar vibes, similar themes, similar kind of like presentation. And that's exactly what you get from this. And you get it. Not only do you get a comic book presentation from this or an animation presentation from this, you get pushing the boundaries of animation.
Right.
You get something that is next level.
Right.
And honestly, maybe the most impressive animated movie I've ever seen.
Yep.
For what it does to like I said, those scenes with Gwen and her dad are like staggering when you look at the way that the colors change, reflecting the emotions of the characters as they're talking and what they're saying to each other. Like, everything matters. And to me, that's what puts this really a leg above. I don't think this does anything worse than any other your average superhero movie. I really don't.
No.
It takes so many characters, and I could basically I could cut you up 2 or 3 character traits of 20 characters because they treat all of them with respect, and they give them all different things to do. Like, the Daniel Kaluuya character could have been just a nobody nothing character, but he has that sort of, like, yes, he's rebelling because he's Spider-Punk and because he doesn't like authority, but at the same time, he gives Gwen the watch.
Right.
And he helps Miles escape.
Right.
Like, but he doesn't do it in a way where he's like, he does it kind of in a low-key way.
Right.
And it's like, it's so emblematic of that character. And they do these little things with all these little characters. Better than in the first one, especially. And it just adds more color, literally and figuratively, to the animation and to sort of the whole story.
I agree.
How do you think they're going to resolve the story? This is my last question. Do you think that Jeff is going to die?
Yeah, I do. I don't want him to, but I do.
Do you think that? So, do you think that Miles from Earth 42 is going to help our Miles, or do you think that our Miles is going to have to defeat him?
I don't know. The multiverse stuff is confusing to me, to be honest.
So, bad Miles. Do you think
Yeah.
bad Miles is going to help good Miles?
Maybe, yeah.
I think I could see him kind of making some sort of connection with him.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's how he gets out.
And it shows the duality of our. We all have good and bad in us, and we can. And it's about figuring out how to make it work to push forward in the most positive way possible.
Well, the whole movie's about parallels, right? It's
There
like
you go.
it's got the Peter. If you look at Peter B. Parker and Miguel, like you have one who has a child and who's working with his child. And you have Miguel who
Lost a child.
who lost a child who wasn't really his child but was his
Right.
counterpart's child. You have the Earth 42 and the Earth whatever, the main Earth. You have Jeff being the father to Miles becoming Spider-Man, and you have Erin becoming the father to Miles becoming Prowler, with Jeff dying in the Prowler universe and Erin dying in the Spider-Man universe. So you kind of see there's like that whole competing father figure kind of thing, where like our Miles calls Prowler, Erin, Uncle Erin, like he's like, you're not a bad guy, you're a good guy or whatever, and Erin kind of scoffs at it. But you see in the first movie that like that Erin, he wasn't necessarily a good guy, but you could see that sort of goodness in him, which made him such a great character, and which like Mahershala Ali again, perfect for that type of role.
Amazing.
So you get all these parallels, and I could see them sort of taking Prowler Miles and Spider-Man Miles and sort of they both use each other and like mix each other's like personalities and techniques and all that together, and philosophies together to sort of show that, again, even when you would say that Miles Prowler is kind of lost in a way, like that you're never fully gone, and that you can always, if you try hard enough at it, and if you can sort of change your mindset, you can become something better and become something good. Even if you're not Spider-Man, you can become your own sort of thing, your own sort of hero in that universe, possibly.
Beautiful.
So I could see something like that happening. I mean, we're gonna have the whole Spot thing resolved. I'm sure Spot's gonna fail or whatever, but he may kill Jeff. And so I'd say that the fate of the two Mileses and Jeff, I would say, are the questions here. And then the other question, I guess, would be like, how does Miguel fit into all of it? Like, does he let Miles do his own thing and become his own thing? Because he says to him, like, you were never supposed to be Spider-Man, like, you're not Spider-Man. But I think one of the overarching things of the series and of all coming-of-age stories is that it's your choice.
Exactly.
Your choices make you Spider-Man. It's not what you got bit by.
Right.
I'm Spider-Man. I didn't get bit by a spider, but I think I'm Spider-Man. It's like, what is it, manifesting?
Yeah, he's manifesting.
It's kind of like that. And I think that a big part of the wrap-up is going to be Miles being like, Miguel, you're wrong. Like, I am Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing all these great things to help people.
You heard it here first.
And the question is is Miguel going to accept that, or is he going to turn into like sort of a villain?
Right.
And be, I mean, he's like a freaking like vampire. Like, he's got like eight variants of his Spider-Man
emo.
persona. I mean, Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, I mean,
Has Oscar Isaac ever not been like kind of like a sad boy?
No. I don't care even if he has, no.
Except for that one dance scene in Ex Machina. He was a sad boy, and like even in like A Most Violent Year.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So those are my three questions are the Mileses, Miguel, and whatever the other one was that I said. What was it? Miguel. Oh, whether Jeff dies. So I have a feeling that they're gonna probably pull it out so that everything kind of works out. But I could see Jeff being the casualty of it. But yeah, totally just a guess. I have no idea. I'm not in on the Beyond the Spider-Verse writing team.
No.
those are my predictions anyway. What else do I got? Oh, yeah, the one thing that I wrote before we got the whole canon event reveal was that I wrote that it's clever because usually I feel that bigger, sprawling stories kind of dilute a movie, but this one works because of its concept, because we all know the general idea of the Spider-Man Gwen Stacy story, like when Gwen, dies in the comics. Some of us know the story of Miles and his dad, so we have the inherent built-in tension of wondering whether we're in that universe or a different universe. And that's whether the focus character is Miles or Gwen or Pav, or whoever's universe we're in.
Right.
There's a tension between fate. Do these things happen in every universe? And choice, whether we're able to stop those things. And it plays really well into the movie. And then, literally, the next scene,
they did the canon events.
Miguel was talking about all the canon events, and I was like, I was paying attention. Yep. The Spider Society lobby is probably hell on earth with all the spider people wisecracking 24/7. Oh, I said the most relatable part of this movie is literally no one caring when Jake Johnson's Spider-Man shows up and starts showing pictures of his kids to everybody.
Very relatable.
I was like, oh, I feel that. I feel that a lot, Jake. I feel that a lot, Peter. Peter B. That's all my comments. Trivia. As I mentioned, at a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes, this is the longest American animated film to date, according to IMDb.
Okay.
Number 2, Miles' father uses the last name Morales in this movie for the first time in Marvel history.
Oh, really?
His name was also shortened from Jefferson to Jeff, potentially to avoid association with Confederate President Jefferson Davis.
Yeah.
Because his last name was Davis.
Right. Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know why. I'm sure that when the comic was written, there was a reason for that.
Yeah.
But it was probably explained in the comic.
Right. Right.
Which is obviously not a focus of this movie.
Yeah.
I did notice that they changed his name, and I was wondering, and it was just kind of to get that out of the picture.
Sure.
Number 3, the number 42 features prominently in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and in this film, Peter Ramsey attributes it as an homage.
When I think of 42, I think of Jackie Robinson.
Brooklyn baseball legend Jackie Robinson.
There you go.
As 42 was the number he made famous in his historical career. To quote Ramsey, 42 was Jackie Robinson's jersey number for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was a barrier-smashing black superhero in baseball, and Miles is a color-smashing black superhero in Spider-Man comics.
Very cool.
Number 4, Spider-Punk is an alternate universe mixture of both Spider-Man and the original Prowler. The original Hobie Brown was the first Prowler, a petty thief turned hero after being redeemed by Spider-Man, which is maybe where they could be going in the second one.
There you go.
The new Spider-Punk may be Miles from Earth 42. Aaron Davis would become the Prowler of the Ultimate Marvel Universe in 2011, and he's kind of the canon Prowler in this series. And number 5, while Miguel's explanation of the canon events only covers the most plot-relevant ones, namely being bitten by an enhanced spider and the death of a beloved family member and police captain, the holographic display shows many others with both original comic panels and variations featuring other Spider people. These include freeing oneself from a pile of rubble, briefly renouncing the Spider-Man identity and throwing away the costume, losing a Gwen Stacy, encountering the Venom symbiote, and hitting the jackpot / sharing an upside-down kiss / getting married to a Mary Jane.
There you go.
So we'll see if we get any of those from.
I mean, we got it with Peter B.
Right. But I mean, with Miles, with our
maybe
lead.
When he's at Princeton, he'll meet an MJ.
Maybe, but that would mean that him and Gwen don't get together.
That's fine. I don't see them getting together.
I love their little.
I think
chemistry.
they have a great friendship.
Yeah.
I think it's platonic.
Maybe. We'll see, but yeah, I think that's all I've got for Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I don't think Gwen's interested in him. To be
Maybe.
honest with you.
Maybe. It's very possible. But we'll see. And yeah, so anything else?
No.
Does Spider-Man in Beyond? Whoa.
See, I told you the name's confusing.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse make Baby's first watch list.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already said we were gonna have him probably watch these movies. Yeah, of course. This is not. I mean, he can watch this whenever, pretty much.
Yeah.
Imagine he was totally into this movie. He's a year and a half.
A little early.
He's got some Spider-Man stuff.
A little bit. A little bucket hat.
Yeah, he does have a bucket hat, Spider-Man bucket hat. Yeah, I mean, this one, it's loaded with takeaways, honestly, from
We talked about all of them.
Yeah, parent-child perspective, which we've talked about here. So, yeah, so that's Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. Hope you enjoyed.
Nope, it wasn't.
Huh? Did I say Beyond again?
Spider-Man Across the Universe.
Spider-Man Across the Universe, which is the Beatles movie. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Shout out Julie, whatever her name is.
This was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
That's better.
And next week we have, is All That Jazz next week?
I think so.
It's either All That Jazz or Princess Bride. I forget.
I think it's All That Jazz.
I think it's All That Jazz. Yeah, we're going to do All That Jazz next week.
Yeah, why not?
Best Picture nominee in 1980, I think, stars Roy Scheider from Jaws. Directed by Bob Fosse, the famous everything to do with musicals
Choreographer, really.
Yeah, but I mean, directed stuff. He
Yeah.
did a ton of stuff.
Sam Rockwell played him.
In Fosse Verdon.
Fosse Verdon.
And Verdon was Michelle Williams.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was nominated for like 9 Academy Awards. It won, I think, 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Not Best Picture, unfortunately, which I think was Kramer versus Kramer that year.
Okay.
But yeah, if you haven't heard of it, if you haven't watched it, check it out. We haven't seen it. We're just gonna watch it.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this movie except that it's what I just said.
We're gonna come back like,
Yeah, we're gonna come back and just be like, this is the worst. Does not make Baby's First Watch List. No, but yeah, so we hope you will check it out if you haven't already, and then listen in with us next week and keep sharing our clips, keep following us and all that. We love the support. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We will see you guys next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.